If you are watching this video, you are probably taking my course Current Issues in International Business, which requires you to conduct some research and write a 10 to 15 page academic paper on a topic of your choice. This video series is meant to give you some guidance for your project and give you a short introduction into what research is and how the academic research process looks like. And specifically for this video, I would like to give you a brief introduction into the research process and define what research is and how this could look like for your specific project. So let's jump right into it. I want to start with the question of what research actually is. Now, if we look at the definition, the textbook gives us the following definition. It is the systematic investigation into and study of materials and sources in order to establish facts and reach new conclusions. Gill and Johnson point out that research can mean one or both of those things, which is to find out something that we don't know. And this is typically the answer that I get when I ask this question in class. We try to find out something that we don't know and try to understand that better. But Gill and Johnson point out that research is also about finding out that we don't know something, and that can be as valuable as finding out something that we don't know. I also would like to differentiate research from intelligence gathering. Intelligence gathering are what questions? These are vital, but they are not really research in an academic sense. So for example, what is the temperature of the baby's bathtub? Right? Very important. When you have a baby, you have to measure the temperature. It should be around 37 degrees so that the baby feels well. That's very important, but this is not research. Same as the flight schedule from Bangkok to Singapore, for example. That's also intelligence gathering, but not research in an academic sense. And also, taking a work example, if you want to understand the level of losses from the fresh food department, for example, in a supermarket, this would also be intelligence gathering, data gathering, not research. Research, on the other side, is more related to why questions, so trying to establish explanations, relationships between different variables, comparisons, predictions, coming up with theories. So for example, why is Thailand's GDP growth slower than Malaysia's? The fact that it is slower or faster, this would be intelligence gathering, but then the question, why is that the case, that would require research. Or why do customers now buy more takeaway food compared to a couple of years ago? This would also be a great research question. Now, what are characteristics of good research? And touching on what I just said about understanding what we don't know and understanding that we don't know something, research is based on an open system of thought. Meaning that when we go into a research project as a researcher, we should be open-minded about the outcome of the research. Researchers need to examine data critically, need to look at a data set and then ask critical questions and try to understand reasons and rationales behind the data that they see. And finally, researchers do generalize, but they also are very aware and specify and point out the limits of their generalization. So how much they can generalize versus what the limitations of this generalization is. These are the three characteristics of good research. Now, business research specifically is defined as the systematic and objective process of gathering, recording, and analyzing data for the aid of making decisions in business. And here we differentiate two types of business research. The first one is pure research or basic research, which basically is academic research aiming to expand the boundaries of knowledge itself. And it looks at verifying a given theory, so explaining the what is happening and why is it happening. And another group Another type of research is applied research. This is very often done by consultants on their job when they try to solve a specific business problem. Here, the question is more how. So explaining a process or how to get to a certain result, and that should support managerial decision making. Now, specifically about your project. The first important thing to do is to plan the research. And we always should start out with a research objective. What do we want to achieve with our research project? And there's different types of research that you can think of. One can be exploratory, so purely exploring a new field of study, maybe understanding, in this case, more the what and the why than the how, or explanatory, which really dives deep into the why. Why is something happening? For example, why are people behaving in a certain way? Why are people motivated or not motivated? And what motivates them? Clarification on a topic that maybe has been researched previously. A new theory that should be developed. Problem solving specifically for a manager or managerial problem that pops up at work or in a work environment. The research can be very conceptual, which is mostly academic research, or it can also be predictive, so trying to predict a certain behavior. For example, if we pay a bonus, how does this impact the motivation and the achievement of the person in the next year? Or what is the correlation between the salary level and the work output, for example? So after we have defined what the research objective is, then we go into research methods. And here we have basically 7 core research methods, which we will look at in a later video. Just briefly here, the methods are experiments, something called quasi-experiments, so something in between experiments and the next one, which is action research. Then we have surveys that we can conduct, case studies, specifically looking at a company or at 2 or 3 companies or a sector. There's longitudinal research, which looks at developments over time. And there's ethnographic research also, which looks at specifically cultural developments and cultural questions. And then we have to identify what is the research target. So what are we actually researching? Are we researching individuals or management professionals? Are we researching departments or an organization that consists of several departments? Or are we researching a whole sector and relationships between organizations? Or are we conducting research even on a national basis? So first, research objective, then the research method, and then the target. And that helps us plan our research. Once we have the plan in place, then we can really start the research sequence. So first, we need to identify the broad area of interest. So what is actually the broad topic that we want to study? Then we select the topic. So we dive a little bit deeper and understand like what is our topic and what is the research question that we would like to answer. Once we have formulated the research question and the topic, then we need to decide on the approach. So how are we going to find out about our topic? How are we going to solve for the research question that we are answering? In the 4th step, then we formulate the plan. And this is really important to lay out a timeline and a step-by-step process in order to get to our answer. Then we start collecting the information. Only then we start collecting the information, I should say, after we have really formulated a well laid out plan. Once we have collected the information, all the information is with us and complete, then we start to analyze the data and well write up the paper and eventually present the findings. So these 7 steps are the research sequence. Now, finally, I want to talk about characteristics of a good research topic. As you choose your research topic, how should you think about this? And especially for student projects, which typically don't have a lot of time, time constraint of about 2 to 3 months, as here in our case, the first thing you have to think about is access. Do you have access to data and information? And how can you get access to the information that you need? So for example, do you have contact to interviewees? Do you have access to databases or to specific company data? Do you have any specific insights into a topic that you can use to write something about? So this is all what I would call access here. Then with access comes addressing the time constraint. So is all of this achievable in the time that you have available? So for our project, only 3 months time. So it needs to be rather basic, but interesting enough to make up for a 10 to 15 page academic paper. The third criteria for a good research topic is that the potential outcome should be symmetric. What do I mean by this? Symmetric means it really doesn't matter what the outcome is. It would be equally interesting. And again, this links back to what we said earlier about finding out that we don't know something. Sometimes just finding out that our hypothesis was wrong is as interesting as just proving or trying to prove the hypothesis. So, for example, if you are studying the impact of a university degree on manager's career, if you find the impact, if you can have some evidence that there is an impact, well, that's interesting, of course, and that's probably the hypothesis and what we want to prove. But even if you find out that there's absolutely no impact between the university degree and manager's career, it would still be interesting. The fourth criteria is that your topic should match your own capabilities and your own interests. We have 3 months, and these 3 months can be very enjoyable or very painful. And I always recommend, if you have the choice between a seemingly very exciting project, but that is not really in your area of interest, and something that is a little bit more basic, but that you're really interested in, I would always go for the project that you are interested in, because that will make it much more fun, much more rewarding for you as well. And you might learn something new about a topic that you're already interested in. Financial support. So of course, our student projects need to be self-financed. There's no funding for this. Most of the projects that I had in the last couple of years didn't require any major spend. Most of the tools like Google Forms or SurveyMonkey and so on are generally free. So typically there shouldn't be any cost impact or financial impact. But anyway, if you think that you need to spend on something like on tools and so on, you should just set yourself a budget and try to stay within that budget. But as I said, like, it is absolutely not necessary to require any financials for this student project. And finally, final characteristic is that there should be a manageable scope of the research, and it should bring some value. Ideally, your research project has some practical application, something that we all can relate to, or that you can relate to, other students can relate to. It should expand our knowledge, and I specifically say our knowledge because that includes me as well. I learn tremendously much from these research projects. And if possible, maybe we find some topics that challenge our current beliefs and that bring us forward in our thinking. That would be also very helpful. So much for this short introduction. This should just give you a brief overview of what is coming up in terms of your research project. And now wish you good luck in selecting your topic. So you should start having a basic idea of what you want to do. And we will dive into more details on research methodology in one of the next videos. Thank you so much for watching.